Good evening. I'm going to describe to you how I documented 150 frauds in the field of human evolution. Hello, I'm Dr. Carl Werner. You may know me as the author of the Evolution, the Grand Experiment book series. I'm extremely excited to tell you that my wife Debbie and I have just completed our epic television miniseries on human evolution, in which we documented 150 instances of fraud carried out by human evolution scientists who were working at the American Museum in New York City, the Natural History Museum of London, the National Museum of Natural History in Paris, the National Museum of Kenya, the National Museum of South Africa, and other museums and national universities. Shockingly, many of these fraudulent ape men are currently on display today. When we began filming the interviews, I did not detect any obvious big problems with the reported ape men. But when we began to photograph the original ape man fossils stored in the museum vaults, frauds began to emerge. For example, when we photographed the original Turkana boy skull at the National Museum of Kenya, it did not look like the official published photographs. The photos had been doctored, and the face of the skull had been altered by Richard Leakey. In a similar way, when we photographed the type specimen of Homo habilis, fossil OH7, it also did not look like the official published photographs. It too had been significantly altered and enlarged by Dr. Philip Tobias. The famous Tumai skull recently found in Chad, North Africa, was also altered. The position of the foramen magnum had been changed, and Dr. Brunet hid the all-important femur from other scientists, which had been found next to the skull. When we began to conduct secondary interviews to look into these and other discrepancies, the frauds seemed to multiply. For example, we interviewed Dr. F. Clark Howell, who created the iconic human evolution chart in the Time Life book entitled Early Man. But when we interviewed his former graduate student, he indicated that Howell placed animals in his human evolution chart that Howell knew were not ape men or ancestors of humans. When we interviewed the lead scientist who was present when the Tumai skull was found in the Jurab Desert in Chad, he contradicted most of Dr. Brunet's claims. When we interviewed the co-director of the Lucy expedition, Dr. Yves Coppens, and the former director of the National Museum of Tanzania, they contradicted Dr. Johansson's claims and facts about Lucy. Shockingly, several scientists accused their colleagues of committing fraud. For example, Dr. Angela Milner, curator at the Natural History Museum in London, accused a former colleague of hers carrying out the Piltdown fraud. Dr. Ron Clark from the University of the Witwatersrand accused Dr. Philip Tobias of fraudulently altering the Homo habilis skull STW53. Dr. Robert Brain from the National Museum of South Africa reported Dr. Dart's end-of-life advice to, quote, never let the truth get in the way of a good story. Dr. Dart, by the way, carried out 35 frauds. Dr. Ernst Haeckel, the second most important and influential evolution scientist in the world, was caught in over 50 frauds. In his wretched and twisted defense, he justified his actions by reporting that hundreds of other scientists carried out similar frauds. Since Dr. Haeckel did not elaborate who committed these frauds or what the frauds were, I did not include these additional 200 frauds in my list of 150. In fact, there are so many frauds in the field of human evolution, we had to break them up into 4 episodes in the 8-part miniseries. Episode 5 covers human evolution frauds in the Americas. Episode 6 covers human evolution frauds in Africa. And Episode 7 covers frauds carried out in Europe. Finally, in Episode 8, an entire segment is devoted to Dr. Brunet's recent Toomai 8-man frauds. In our new Human Evolution mini-series just released, you will see spectacular original footage that Debbie filmed at the dig sites from around the world and amazing original fossils stored in university and museum vaults that few have ever seen. What does this all mean? I leave it up to you to decide. What do you think?